Life Check Yourself with Sharon Pope. 5 breakthrough secrets to master your marriage, midlife, communication, conflict, and get clarity. Welcome to another fantastical episode of Life Check Yourself. You're going to love today's episode because I have Sharon Pope here today. She is a certified master life coach and relationship expert. She helps women and men get the tools they need to improve, heal, or release their struggling marriages. And I know she has a whole focus in a new book about midlife and empty nesting. She's a 7-time internationally best-selling author. She's got, including a book called Stay or Go, How to Find the Confidence and Clarity to either fix the struggles in your marriage and move forward without regret, which has sold 300,000 copies. She has a podcast called The Loving Truth. She's been in lots of media outlets, including Modern Love. I'm like so impressed when I saw that because, you know, that's the end all be all for us writer people.
Yeah.
So super cool about that. And we're gonna dive into it. I think so many people who are listening, every marriage has confrontations.
Mm-hmm.
I think people get to a certain age and they're like, oh, well, there's probably like something worse out there, like it could be worse. But they don't really like look at their relationship or try to make it better. Let's just start with looking at confrontation and challenges. Like, is that a sign that something is really, really bad? Like, what's the difference between bickering and a confrontation? How can they be helpful?
Yeah, I feel like somewhere along the way we got this bright idea that in the best marriages you never argue, and I just think that that's completely it's unrealistic, but it's also just not true because if you're never arguing, then that means one of you isn't telling the full truth, and you're probably putting your needs on the back burner so that you can keep the peace in the relationship. So I actually think that we should normalize that you're going to have disagreements. You're going to have different priorities at different times in your life. You're going to have even arguments. And that doesn't mean that anything's gone wrong. Like you could look at that and go, oh, something's gone terribly wrong. Or you could look at it and make it mean we have an opportunity here to understand one another more deeply if we're willing to go there. I think in our most intimate relationships, we all want to be seen and understood. And when you don't see eye to eye on something, that is a perfect opportunity to be able to dive in with your partner and be like, help me understand why you see this differently than me. Assume that you're not married to an idiot and just ask. Like,
hashtag assume you're not married to an idiot. I love that.
Married to an idiot, and that they have a very good reason why they see this the way that they do. But alas, a lot of us, we just get really caught up in wanting to get our way, wanting to be right more than we want to connect with our partners.
Yeah.
And it gets in the way.
It's really interesting. I was just coaching someone this morning about this pattern that they discovered where they learned in childhood that like, you're never satisfied. Like, this isn't enough. There's always something to fix. Someone else has something better or different. And I wanted to bring that one up because I think the typical thing is like, oh, well, the reason I'm dissatisfied or there's a challenge is because my partner, is flawed in some way and that there's ideal fantasy of the perfect guy out there. But if we switch it, we're like, oh, it's a me thing. How do you encourage your clients, people who read your book, to start like looking in the mirror and kind of addressing some of those patterns that set you up to never be happy?
Yeah, it literally is like from day one. Taking responsibility for your choices, your actions, your behaviors. At first, it feels a little bit prickly. Like even in the context of having difficult conversations, it always takes two people. It takes two people to create a healthy relationship. It takes two people to create a dysfunctional relationship. So it's really easy to just point the finger and blame the other person because then you don't have to deal with anything. So But what I'm going to tell you is that the minute you are able to own your part, and it can be 10%, it can be 90%. All right. You get to choose what percent that is. But the minute you own your part, that really is when possibilities open up for you that don't exist when it's all just someone else's fault. Because if you think about it, if it's always someone else's fault that you're in a bad mood, if it's always someone else's fault that you're dissatisfied in your life, if it's always someone else's fault, you are just in the role of the victim for your entire life. And that is never going to feel good, right? We all want to feel empowered in our lives, but you are not empowered if you're blaming everybody else. So at first it feels a little prickly, like, wait a minute, what do you mean? It's my fault? Like, no. It's not about fault. It's not about placing blame anywhere. It's just about, if I can own my stuff and you can own your stuff, then my friend, when we come together as a couple, what we can create can be amazing. But if I always have to be the bad guy to you and you always have to be the bad guy to me, we're just not going to get anywhere. And we're just going to end up either living like roommates for the rest of our lives, being really disconnected, or we're going to divorce. It's not going to last.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I was going to couples therapy with my husband, and like, this was years and years ago. And someone told me, and I'm not dissing therapy or couples therapy, but what this therapist told me was, people come in here like with an agenda of like, I'm going to tell you why my partner is a total douchebag. And then I'm going to get a third party to tell my partner, honestly, you're a total douchebag. Jane is right. And that's like setting yourself up to like go in, check the boxes, be right, and never really take that personal responsibility. So what do you think makes the kind of approach that you have, this approach that you take? Why does it work? And why are there 300,000 copies of this book sold? Like, what's different about it?
I think what's different is, and it kind of stems off of what we're talking about, is that it is like, while we cannot change anybody else,
right,
we can create change in ourselves. And when we do that, it impacts how we show up in the relationship, and it impacts the dynamics of the relationship itself. Because when you think about a relationship, there's you and there's your partner, and then there's this third entity, which is your marriage. So if you change, then 50% of this marriage entity has now changed. So physics just,
that's a lot. Yeah.
Changes a lot. Right. And I
does.
give it like, tennis, like you just kind of go back and forth. You hit the ball back and forth. So that's all we're doing. Like, we're just reacting and responding to our partner. So when you show up with a bunch of blame, defensive energy, the volley's going to look a certain way. But if you show up with, help me understand why you see this differently, I genuinely want to know, I want to understand, that's going to go a completely different direction. So it's about the energy that you bring to it. And you can create a lot of change in all of your relationships without needing the other person to change a darn thing.
Oh, I love this so much. Let me ask you this, so we've kind of set this scenario up where this shit goes on for so long, right? Especially if there's like distractions, like kids or elderly parents, or just trying to pay the bills, or however it is. So what happens? And maybe it shows up when the nest is empty, or maybe it shows up in some sort of transition. But when there's this resentment or hurt that's just been buried for years, what do you do? And is it repairable?
I mean, everything's repairable. So yes, of course.
Yay.
But what do you, I mean, if you're willing to work on it, if you're willing to do that work, it can be repaired. It's possible. Go back to, what was the question? Sorry, go back.
The question. No. So how do you, if you've had these hurts or resentments that they're just going for so long, like you're just in a pattern of being critical, or a pattern of blame, or a pattern of like, these are all the ways you let me down over the last 10 years. I've been keeping it, because my husband says, damn, women have like an automatic checklist in their brains.
Women actually do. They hang on. We hang on to things for years.
That's what he tells me.
And we remember, it's actually a physiological thing. We hang on to the emotion of the memory. where men don't necessarily hang on to the emotion of the memories. They might remember, but they don't carry the emotion of it, which is
my husband's like, wait, what? Wasn't that like 5 years ago? And I'm like,
I remember it.
I was wearing my blue pants and my red shirt. He's like, oh my God, like, can you use this for good instead of evil? So let's talk about that.
Yeah. But if you are always just sort of burying your head in the sand and pretending and not bringing it up. And I understand why we do that. Like, we just don't want to get in an argument. We want to keep the peace. We don't feel comfortable. We don't feel like we're equipped to have that conversation, whatever. There's a bunch of reasons why we might avoid those conversations. But the problem is that what you ignore doesn't magically get healed. It doesn't go away. It just festers, almost like a cancer.
Right.
And it infects the marriage. It just grows and spreads, and you disconnect from your partner and you start to not trust each other. And it's not good. So this is where it's like the difficult conversations, we should want to get good at them. Okay. Because just stuffing them down and pretending that the resentment or the hurt didn't happen, it's not working very well. Just look at our divorce rates.
Yeah, people just bail.
Yeah.
Because of the buffet. Let me just swipe and find someone else. So let's talk about the difficult conversations. So let's begin kind of, I think, with intention. How does having an intention, being thoughtful about it, have a role in difficult conversations?
So your intention is about why you're going to have the difficult conversation, first of all, right? Because no one wants to have a difficult conversation. It's not like it's a good time. So why am I doing this thing? Right. And so if you think about it like this, if I'm doing it to be right, or I'm doing it to make him feel guilty or feel shame, like, this is not going to go very well.
No.
Right. But if I'm doing it because we have a disagreement, and I want to come to a mutual understanding and come to some resolution, then I'm going to approach this conversation very differently. If I want to create more intimacy and connection in the marriage, that can be a super productive conversation. It's helpful if you tell them in advance of the like as you're starting the conversation, this is my intention here, is that I want to feel closer to you, right? Or if your intention is to be heard and understood. Look, I don't need you to solve my problem right now, but what I really need is someone to just say, babe, you got this. I love you.
Right.
And, tell him how to listen. Those are productive conversations. But how you approach this conversation is going to dictate how you show up for that conversation.
And I think this is a really important, besides being able to sort of like share it, I'll talk to people, I'll be like, so there's this and I'm like, what do you want? Or what do you need? Or like, what are you asking? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's just, like there's just this thing. And so I think like in that blame cycle we're talking about, when you don't have an intention, you're not being productive, right? It's just a rant or whatever. So this is a really important self-awareness exercise that you can get clear on, like, what do you really need? What do you want? And the other thing
why am I doing this? What is the outcome that I want? What could you do to make it better? Like, you got to get clear before you enter into these conversations. Otherwise, you're flailing about and you're thinking your partner's going to come in and save you. He doesn't even know where to enter that madness.
No, definitely not. And I was going to ask you, like, when we don't have an intention, I would guess it can be harder when the person we're talking to like comes up is angry or says something. So is there a technique that you have for kind of holding your ground or staying calm or staying centered when, emotions run high?
So I think of it like, I don't know if this is the best analogy, but this is the one that I use a lot because it just is what comes to mind for me. Okay. I think of it like a tree. Like, the intention is the tree trunk. Okay. And you're going to get into this conversation about, look, we see this. Let's say it's a parenting issue. We don't see this the same way. I want to understand how you see it, blah, 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 whatever. And let's say he's like, well, you did this thing last week. He's trying to take you down a branch.
Right.
Right. Don't follow him down the branch.
My ex used to do that until I figured out. I'd be like, wait a minute, I was talking about this and now you're talking about like this other thing.
Keep the main thing, the main thing. Don't get distracted. If he's like, well, you did this thing last week and it was the same. And you can be like, look, I'm glad to talk about this thing last week at a different time. Right now, what we're talking about is this particular situation, this specific thing that you did that led to XYZ, whatever it is, right? But you just keep the main thing, the main thing. You stay in the tree trunk. Don't go down those branches because that's where you just get baited and you're all over the place.
When I realized when I was falling for it because of like, I had a pattern of defensiveness, right? So like I would follow any accusation, like down the branch, down the hole with the squirrel, well, it's like run around the fence. What?
It's what most people do, right? If they show anger, you give them anger back. And if they're blaming you, you blame them back. And this is how we get into these unpredictable.
I felt like such a badass when I because all this is like a gold mine right here. Once you recognize it, you see it everywhere. Like, in lots of relationships, when my kids were teenagers, I was like, oh, you're doing it too. I'd be like, damn, like it's everywhere. And I love what the script, I want you all to like rewind and write down the script that Sharon said, because it's like, okay, like, sure, maybe that's valid. Maybe it's not. Like, I'm happy to have that conversation at another point, like put a pin in it.
Yep.
Now we're talking about like, the dishes or what happened last night or whatever it is. So, and we want to be confident in, knowing that it's okay to do that, right? Like how do you create confidence to just do it? Yeah.
Well, I think that part of feeling confident or feeling like you're equipped to be able to have these conversations is keeping it simple, right?
Yes,
and that's why focusing on just one thing at a time helps you keep it really simple. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to just take a break. Like I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves that we need to know what to say, have it at the ready and know exactly where to go all the time. And it's okay to just be like, you know what? I need a few minutes to think about this. And whoever takes the break, it's your responsibility to come back. So it can be 10 minutes, it can be an hour, it can be a day, it can be a week, whatever it is, but it's your responsibility to come back. And it's okay to take a break and just kind of check in with yourself and think about, what has happened thus far.
What is one thing that women in particular can do better? I'm sure there's probably a step ladder of possibilities, but what can I do better in these conversations? How can I do better in these conversations?
It's one of my favorite things to teach because I don't think we were taught this. But I think, so first of all, women communicate more indirectly where men communicate more directly.
Okay.
So women, we can speak in nuances and subtleties and we'll get it. If you're around your girlfriends, you understand what's being said. You also understand what's not being said. You probably can put yourself in their shoes and empathize with how they felt in that particular situation. Men do not do this. Okay. Women also communicate in order to connect, where men communicate for a purpose. So women, if we want to be heard, then it helps us to be more direct in terms of how we communicate with people. But we weren't taught this, right? We were taught to be nice.
Right.
Which usually means be agreeable, be accommodating, be loving, and God forbid, don't be angry. Don't ever be angry, right? So we were never taught to just be direct and own our emotions, because God forbid someone think that like we're a bitch.
Right.
Direct does not mean bitchy. It just means clear. And in the words of Brené Brown, clear is kind.
Right. Clear is so kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a whole thing, is to think about what is someone's relationship to power. Like is it like, oh, I have to have power over somebody to be powerful, or I don't want to be masculine. Do you feel like that so many women get confused? Like if they're direct, then they're being masculine. Is that still happening?
I mean, for sure. Yeah. And I tend to attract a lot of type A, I call it GSD, get shit done type of ladies.
Yes.
Yeah. So the things that work for us in our professions are the bringing a lot of masculine energy to the table. The problem is it doesn't work so well in our interpersonal, in our intimate relationships. I used to say like that was the theme actually of the Modern Love column that I wrote. It was called leaving or taking the boardroom out of the bedroom or something like that. And it was there was no off switch. Like I was the boss at work, and then there was no off switch for me to dial it down when I came home. And my husband was not an employee. And I got to imagine that must have been kind of challenging to curl up next to me at night with all that sort of get shit done, you're my employee kind of energy. So,
yeah. And I think it's funny. I had a lot going on. I was like doing a thing, and then I had to work. I wanted to work out, and then I came back thing. And my husband came in with the groceries, and I literally had to stop Sharon and be like, okay, this is like, he is not like someone in the office where he's like, was commissioned to do the task of go to the grocery store. Yeah. So how can I go upstairs instead of being like, get out of my way, I need to eat, I have 20 minutes, you know, like to be like, hi, oh my God, thank you. Right. And I had to like make that switch because I felt myself like in grind mode, just like running up the stairs to like, you know, feed my belly for 10 minutes.
Well, I feel like, I mean, God, you just described like almost every woman I know, right?
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm not alone.
We're overscheduled. We're always busy. Like we fit, oh, I've got 10 minutes. What can I be doing? Like we're not relaxed. We're like strung up really, really tightly. And so then when it comes to our marriages, unless we're really conscious, it's going to be challenging to like, just take a breath and kind of settle into a safe space with your partner. Because it's like we have so much to do that we think they're just another person to help us get shit done.
Yes.
And that is not what marriage is about. It's not what relationship is about. It has nothing to do with love.
No, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah, so I went in there, and then he was like all in the mood to give me a hug and all this kind of stuff. And I was like,
you were so nice.
Thank God I showed up for that. Otherwise, I'd be like, okay, get out of my way, you know? But I really appreciate this because I think, you know, for me this year, like I really wanted in my marriage, we've been together like 16 years. I really wanted to just be crystal clear on how I am showing up in all those different moments and my own defaults. Right. And also like I was not taught how to have difficult conversations. Right. Because most of our parents did it pretty shittily. Is shittily a word? I think so.
We can make it a word.
Yes. And if you've had previous relationships, right? Mm-hmm. So how can we what are some tips, quick tips that people can benefit from when it comes to having those conversations? I mean, we're talking right now about a partner or spouse, but also bosses, mother-in-law, friends, kids, like adult kids. What are some tips?
Okay. First of all, if you are not in a calm, grounded state, you are not ready to have a difficult conversation. So wait until you're ready. Write some things down. Write down what your intention is. Write down what your ultimate outcome would be. Speak only from your experience. Don't assume that you know how he's feeling or his motives or any of that. Just speak from your experience. One of the biggies that I teach that almost no one does, but it can completely change every single conversation, is invite your partner to speak first. First of all, you don't use the words, we need to talk. Those are the 4 dreaded words that automatically put people on the defensive. So you can say something like, hey, there's something important that I really want to share with you or just talk with you about. When's a good time? Like, you don't have to overthink it. But then when you come together to have that conversation, you say, I want to understand why you see this the way you see it. Let them talk. Because usually when we say we need to talk, what we're saying is, I've got some things I want to say to you, and you better sit down, shut up, and listen, mister.
And point the finger for extra emphasis.
Maybe a snap. Yeah. So obviously that's not going to go well.
We don't do that. No.
But if you let them talk first and then you let them empty themselves, like I just keep going, like, is there any more you want to say about that? Does that feel complete for you? Like, just keep going. And when he finally says, yep, that's what I want to say, then you can go into, okay, great. I'd like to share with you how my perspective on this. Are you open to hearing that? I call that getting the nod, get his agreement.
I love that. So you want to, I love that. Okay. So are you open, get the nod, and then begin.
And then begin. And by the way, if he interrupts, you say, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. There's obviously more. Go ahead. What you're doing is you're giving the exact sort of presence and listening that you want to receive. You're modeling the behavior that you want. So often we want to model the chaos, but we want respect in return. I want you to give the respect because we all want to be heard, but it's so much easier to listen when you already feel like you've been heard, isn't it? That's true for everybody. So just hear him out, and then he's going to be so much more open to being able to hear you, which is what you both really want and need, right?
This is so brilliant because when you ask someone to speak first, then they talk. So then if they interrupt, not that that's ever happened to me.
Never.
Right. But like, if I could say, oh, you weren't finished, you have something else. Because my reaction would be like, you're interrupting me. Like, you know, let me talk, like fighting for space. Right. So this whole model is really like based on, what you said at the beginning, assume he's not, what did we say?
He's not an idiot. That there's some reason why he feels the way he does.
Right, exactly. So you're like, oh, okay. Rather than being from the defensive. Okay, my last question, well, it might not be my last, but so when you think about the formula for those conversations, which you just kind of modeled for us, how do we is there a way to wrap it up so that there's like, okay, so next time, you know, I'm going to do this. What I'd like from you is this. Is that kind of that Gottman model kind of a thing?
Something. How do you do like, I know this could be challenging for you, but what I really need you to do is fill in the blank, whatever it is that he could do to make it better in the future. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to do that for you, or sorry, for me? Are you willing to do that for us? Like any of that. So I know it might be challenging, but are you willing to do X, Y, Z so that we can not continue to have these same challenges in the future? So, and this is something that probably we can get better at, is that give them the cliff notes. They cannot read your mind. We think it's obvious what they should do. And sometimes maybe it is, like, I don't know, if he kicked the dog, don't kick the dog in the future. Like, right. But sometimes if it's about your feelings, like you got your feelings hurt, then we need to let him know what he could do to make that better. Give him the breadcrumbs. He can't read your mind.
Right. And I think that is like really what I'm hearing from this conversation is that, we want men, or we want our partner to read our mind, like whether consciously or unconsciously. Like, you should know how I feel. You should know what to do. And I have so many people that are like, oh, well, you know, I'm always taking the leadership role. Why can't he initiate these conversations? What do you say to that, Sharon?
I say that they're right, that you shouldn't have to feel like you're doing everything, and that men should take on more of a leadership role in this. And I have hope for younger generations.
I do too.
But I also know who taught our husbands, like of my age and maybe your age, of what it looks like to be a husband, a man, and a father, were their fathers. And what marriage looked like in my parents' generation looks nothing like what marriage looks like and what we expect in marriage today. So,
that's so
I think that they're right. And I say, but you also want change, and you're completely equipped to be able to be the lead on this, because women are more relational creatures. Like, relationships are kind of at the top of our hierarchy in terms of what makes a satisfying, fulfilling life for us. And so you're the one that wants change. So why not you? Because
and what's funny,
we could sit back and wait for him to do it, but you could wait forever.
Well, right. And when you're in that boardroom, you would never do that at work. You wouldn't be like, oh, I'll just wait and see if someone steps up. No, you would be a leader. And it's like, we have it in us to do this. And that expectation, I think by you pointing out, like, again, assume your person isn't an idiot. Like they only know what they know of how they grew up and what their own challenges are. And so we want to, it's much better to just say, I'll take the lead rather than being resentful.
I always joke, like my dad was across the street getting a sandwich when I was born, right? Like he didn't change a diaper. He wasn't even there for my birth. Like it just looked nothing like what marriage looks like today. And so we've got to get equipped so that we can get better at it if we want to be successful at marriage, because the only thing that we walked into marriage with was what we saw at home. And
so
it's not
amazing.
terribly relevant today.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You all are really highly recommended. You can go to sharonpope.com/books and see all of her books and go to her website. And then I know that you have a free video gift, which if I was listening to this, I would be like, oh, I'm going to check this out. It's called Calming Your Constant Marriage Indecision. And that's at SharonPopeFreeTraining.com. All of this will be in the show notes. So much great value. I'm going to go look at your article in Modern Love. Congrats. Did you do that recently or was it a while ago?
No, it was probably, maybe 8 years ago or so.
Still, congratulations.
Thank you. It was
such a good accomplishment. It is hard. That damn guy is real picky. So awesome. Ladies, share this with a friend who is struggling. Rewind, take some notes, write down all these amazing, she just gave you all her scripts. Like she gave it all away right here on Life Check Yourself. Write them down because remember, always and in all ways, it is your responsibility to life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Listen, if you're feeling stuck, I want you to know you're not alone and you don't have to settle for it. I've created a free quiz to help you pinpoint what's draining your energy and exactly how you can fix it. So head over to decodeyourdestinyquiz.com and take the 60-second quiz right now. That's decodeyourdestinyquiz.com. And if you're ready to dive deeper, you can book a free no-obligation consultation at marnibatista.com/private coaching. That's Marni, M-A-R-N-I, Batista, B-A-T-T-I-S, as in Sam, T-A.com/private coaching, all one word. Let's take the first step to creating a life you love on your terms. I'm Marni, and I'll see you next time.